Welcome to the iStart Insider podcast, where we dive into the entrepreneurial journeys of young innovators, startup founders, and industry experts. I'm Sushane Nandarlike, and I'm your podcast host for today. In this episode, we're excited to welcome Lukas Garcia, a Clemson University chemistry and AI student who founded CrystalXG, winning America 250's national startup competition, the Palmetto Pitch Competition, and many more. Good morning, Lucas. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Good
To
morning, man.
start
Happy
off,
to be here.
Awesome. To start off, give me like the elevator pitch on this. If a stranger asked what Crystal XG does, what do you say in like just 30 seconds?
So, crystals play a huge role in all of our lives. Pretty much almost all of the pharmaceutical compounds we take are crystals. And you have to crystallize the compound you're putting out into the market because the FDA requires it for regulatory clearance. But unfortunately, growing crystals was really, really difficult. So, we made a machine learning algorithm where you can now input the molecules you want to crystallize, and then our model gives the user the synthetic pathway necessary to crystallize it.
Wow, okay, so some complicated chemistry stuff. All right, so rewinding here, you're a chemistry major with an AI minor. Was there like any specific moment where you thought during any of your classes that you could build something out of it rather than just being on like the researching side, and that you thought maybe I can be a builder here? Is there any specific moment like that?
Oh, honestly, I had never really wanted to be an entrepreneur. I think ever since I had gone through high school, I kind of had the idea that I was going to get my PhD and then be a professor one day. And so then I ended up, going to Clemson. And before I actually arrived at Clemson, I was doing research on their campus. And then I ran into this lab and then I started doing my research. And I thought, okay, this is pretty interesting. I guess my peers are telling me there's applications in industry and pharma, but I never really thought too much of it. And then I took the Catalyst class at Clemson, and then I really just thought to myself, okay, I could build something out of this. But interestingly, before that, I kind of had an idea to make a machine learning model to help with all organic chemistry. But I saw a guy at MIT, Connor Coley. He had already been working on it. I was like, I
Oh,
can't do this. So yeah, that's kind of when the idea for Crystal XG came.
wow. Okay, so the Catalyst class was definitely a big part then.
Absolutely, absolutely.
All right. And you mentioned being in high school, you wanted to go into a PhD, and I noticed your dad is a chemistry professor at Clemson. So being honest, like how much of this is you like finding your own path versus kind of just following what he does?
Great question. I remember my parents have been very adamant on myself and my older sister on finding our own paths. They've never been too pushy in terms of, hey, you need to go be a doctor, a lawyer, you need to be a chemistry professor. And so I had just been exploring things throughout my whole life. There was a point in time where I wanted to be like a stockbroker, an accountant, following along my mom's path, but she made me sign up for like bookkeeping courses. I was like, this is horrific. I could never do this for the rest of my life. And so then I remember in high school, I took this class, or I took AP Bio in high school, and my favorite unit was the chemistry of biology. So I thought at one point I could be a biochemist, but then I took AP Chem and organic chem, and I was like, yes, this is exactly what I want to do for the rest of my life. And then did research at Johns Hopkins for a summer. Absolutely loved it. I was doing some electrochemistry. And then from then on, I was like, yes, this is my path. I'm going to create my own path. And so definitely it is helpful. My dad has absolutely been an incredible mentor. I cannot thank him enough for helping us throughout all of this. But yeah, definitely it's been about finding my own path.
That's great to hear. And could you tell us more about that research that you did at Johns Hopkins? Maybe like anything that sparked within you? Like you mentioned you did that electrochemistry and you were like, this is for me. Could you tell us more about why it felt that way and like anything specific?
So we were doing electrochemical sensing using biosensors. So we had, it is called an aptamer. It's a single strand nucleotide biosensor that we were using. And for me, the science was extremely complicated at the time because I had only high school level chemistry. But I think just being in the lab and, doing experiments, having them fail and then just having the spark to say, hey, I want to go back tomorrow and try this, and it going and working. I think that to me was the biggest spark, and it just kind of sparked my joy in all things science.
Wow. Okay, could you tell us like how you got into that research? A lot of our listeners are like high schoolers. A lot of people want to do research and stuff. So could you tell us how you got into that?
Yeah, so this So this was a friend of my dad's. So this is absolutely if you can network in high school, take all advantage of it. But I think now more than ever, high schoolers are being accepted into research labs simply because it's just common. So I definitely would just recommend shooting emails with CVs and showing your interest. Please don't use AI to write those emails. You go
Okay.
through a professor's research profile and shoot those. But yeah, like I said, my dad has helped me a lot with a lot of these things, and so that lab placement was definitely one of them.
Okay. All right. That's great. At least, I mean, building connections is very important. So that's some good tips, not using the AI on those emails.
Yes,
All right.
absolutely.
So let's go into more about CrystalXG, what you're working on right now. And so you mentioned it started as a class, like it started inside the class called Catalyst. Can you walk me through like the moment where it wasn't just like a class project and you decided like this is like a real company that I'm going to try and build?
So I think it took a while. It genuinely took a while because I've always liked the idea of being able to make money off of my research. And this really just was my own research project. I had the idea of using machine learning for crystallography. And at this time, I had been compiling a data set. I think, around like 1,000 experiments to start doing some machine learning on that. And it never really felt like it could be something, but I just went and pitched after the Catalyst class had actually ended, and then pitched and won. And even after that, I thought, okay, still a lot of work to be done. I think in terms of the machine learning side, it wasn't looking great. The model was not performing very well at all. But I think after the class, we went and pitched at the school-wide competition, which is the Launchpad Liftoff. We ended up
Mhm.
taking first in that too, and I thought, okay, now this is something that I need to pursue. This is definitely something that's viable, has a lot of scientific opportunity, and I think I just need to find the funds to get it there. So it was really after the class more than anything, but I had just been building the whole time and trying to improve upon it.
Nice. Okay. So it was like kind of like getting that competition validation from just not just in Catalyst, like across the school. You were like, people like this. This is something I should be doing.
Absolutely. And we had some judges who were in pharma and they were like, yes, please, if you ever build this algorithm, like you need to contact me immediately and we'd love to discuss, application and whatnot. So yeah, I think that was one of the big things for us is just the amount of industrial support that we had, within the first year of what we were building.
Okay. So then like you mentioned the judges like kind of showed you there was demand for this. Is there any other way you validated demand for this product? Also just your own, your experience in the lab. Is there any way you validated that demand?
Mhm. I think I tell people this all the time, and it's that crystallography is one of the tightest knit communities in all of science. So pretty much there's thousands of labs, believe it or not, that are literally dedicated to growing crystals. Because again, application with pharma, material science, and whatnot, crystals are everywhere. So if you check at your home institution, you might have a crystallographic lab. And so, we had talked to a lot of crystallographers. We had been sending emails out to try and get as much data as possible. And the validation was there, they were saying, yes, this is something that we've needed for hundreds and hundreds of years. And so, it was just something that we had seen within, that community as well. And so from industry to academia, it was just kind of validated and we just wanted to pursue it from there.
Nice. Okay. All right. In plain terms, because a lot of our listeners won't really know like a lot about crystallography and a lot of like about what the machine learning algorithm really solves here. Can you let like kind of explain in simpler terms what this algorithm does that a human chemist can't do alone, and like what's the full like zeroed in problem that it's solving?
So the thing it really solves is time. I think what people do to grow crystals is they just do hundreds, maybe even thousands of experiments in the hopes that they can obtain a viable crystal form. And so what that looks like is trying out many different reagents, trying out different solvents, length of time, temperature, molar ratios, and whatnot. So kind of what you can do with machine learning is you can screen off of thousands and thousands of different conditions without actually having to do an experiment. And so kind of what our algorithm does is, we input the molecule that we want to crystallize. We do a bunch of thermodynamic and computational calculations and then output, a ranked pathway of what a scientist should try first within the lab. And so that's pretty much what it does. It just saves time for the user.
Yeah, so I've heard about like this AlphaFold and like the model made by Google that does it for proteins. Would you say this is something similar kind of and just doing it for crystals, where it kind of like the model is going through pathways of creating these?
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's kind of what machine learning is. Obviously, the architectures are probably a little bit different, given that, AlphaFold proteins, it's like macromolecules. It's genuinely huge, whereas we work with typically small molecules. But yeah, the pathways are more than likely very, very similar.
Okay, I see. All right. What would you say was like the single hardest problem, like technical or even otherwise, like business wise, in the first 6 months when you were working on this? And how close did you come to like just not working or just deciding to like give up on the idea?
I think about, well, I'm gonna go past 6 months. I think it was 8 or 9 months in. The guy that I had originally co-founded the idea with, we had filed our provisional patent together. He just was not interested in working on the project anymore, which is totally fine. And so from there, it had been, 3 or 4 months of just, hey, I'm waiting for you to do this before we can progress. Like, what are the updates? And they didn't have any. And so that for me is just like the lesson there to be learned is, you need to really find the right team around you to help build your idea up. And if it's not there, then it's a lot of the wasted time that really goes. And even for me, it was just like I had all of this validation around me of this idea. It needs to work. Like we have this demand. And yet I kind of internally thought, okay, well, if my own co-founder doesn't really want to build this up with me, is it really that viable? And so
Hmm.
I think that was one of the things I definitely struggled with the most.
Okay. And going on that, like building a strong team around you, I've noticed you've like now brought on teammates from Rice, Princeton, and UNC. What do you actually like say to convince people? Because this isn't just from like your school, this is from like other top schools. It's like, what do you say to convince them to join a startup like this?
This is why the elevator pitch is so important. Have people interested within 2 minutes and you can have them on your team for 10, 15 years. But I don't know. For us, I had known one of them, DJ, the one from UNC Chapel Hill. Him and I went to high school together, and he had kind of been seeing a little bit of the LinkedIn posts that I had going on, and some of the traction that we were getting. And I honestly, I reached out to him and I was like, "Do you know anyone who does know machine learning who'd be interested?" He was like, "Yeah, me." And I was like, "Sure." I was like, "Yeah, let me interview you," and we brought him on, and then from there. The other two were just friends of friends, honestly. I had reached out to some people at Rice and Princeton, and they told me, yeah, yeah, we have people interested in working on this, and so interviewed them and brought them on. So I don't know, definitely it goes back to networking more than anything, rather than like motivation or passion. But I think if you asked any of them, I think I had them convinced that within 5, 10 minutes that they wanted to be on the project. So it's that
Nice.
elevator pitch.
Okay. And I mean, yeah, like this idea is so like it's the type of idea that you think about. It has like a big vision to it. So I can see like how you're able to, especially with the elevator pitch you gave us at the start, I can definitely see how people would just immediately be interested, especially if they're already in the field. You've won like a lot of these startup competitions like Catalyst, Liftoff, Palmetto, and now America 250. Walking away, like you have so much funding now. What's different about how you pitch now compared to your very first competition, or like just pitching at the start to co-founders or to people who were trying to like validate your idea? What's different, you would say?
I definitely try and do as much research as I can on the judges. I think that's one of the things that really changes up my pitches. Obviously, sometimes you walk in and you're kind of blinded. You don't know who is going to be evaluating your pitch or whatnot. But I think what I try and do more than anything is, you have the standard deck. At this point, I think we've done like 9 or 10 pitch competitions. And so you have that like template that you typically use, and then you just go out and modify it. I think that's one big advice that I would give to people. It's like have different pitch decks for different competitions. Like don't just run the same thing over and over again. specifically, for us, since we are, very science heavy, tech heavy, if we have people who are in pharma who have backgrounds in chemistry and whatnot, like we will make the deck much more chemically like focused.
Mm,
Whereas if we have people, for instance, at America 250, which was extremely business oriented, we'll take off all of the science, we'll take off all of the difficult machine learning, and we
mm.
will just focus on pharmaceutical applications. So I think that's kind of something that has changed now more than anything. And obviously, you win more money, and instead of saying, okay, we have $15,000 of pre-seed fund, you say we have 100,000, And so it's like get that attention getter and whatnot. But yeah, I think that's what changes the most.
Okay, so like kind of tailoring your pitch and tailoring how you present the company to judges depending on like what this competition is about. Would you say like there's a lot of high school competitions where kids might not know like who the judges will be. Like think about like Blue Ocean and stuff. You don't know who's exactly judging that. Would you still say like is there ways to kind of still tailor your pitch based on the competition too then?
Yeah, so I think if I don't know who I'm pitching to, then I will imagine three judges are there. One with a background in science, one with a background in business, and one who might just not know anything. And so then I try and tailor it for all three of them. But I think it's different. For instance, if you're not doing something that's science related, if you're doing something that's maybe along the lines of, I'm trying to think of a good example. Yeah, but just something not science related, I think it would definitely change a lot more because you won't have to tailor it for someone who has that background in science. So yeah, just imagine people from various different backgrounds who should understand your pitch and should take away something from that. And I think you should be in a good position to succeed.
Okay. And from all these competitions, you got like a lot of funding. What would you say, like the 25,000 from America 250, what did that funding unlock that you couldn't have done before?
So with that competition specifically, we're using the funding right now to file our utility patent. So we had a provisional coverage, which if you're not familiar legally, it expires after a year.
Mm,
And so now with the utility, you'll have coverage for 17 years. And so with that, we're using the funding for the utility. But on top of that, with the other, money we've raised so far, I think now we're trying to do an experimental campaign. So we're going to go out and just buy as much chemical reagents and solvents as we can and get as much data as possible for this algorithm. And so that's
mm,
something that's unlocked as well. It's that, for instance, pharmaceutical companies won't necessarily post their formulations. They won't, publicize like how they came to the specific molecule, specific crystalline form. And so what we want to do with our algorithm right now is just validate what our platform across a variety of different, active pharmaceutical ingredients. And so that's what the funds are going for.
So you guys are kind of like creating your own data, like by running those experiments yourself and then training the model off of that?
Pretty much. And yeah, and we want to keep that data disclosed. We don't want to publish that data. And so it's something that will just bring even more value to what we're doing.
Okay. So like I'm assuming in like the pharmaceutical space and stuff, like the data sets that you used at first, public data sets, I'm guessing, did you guys buy any private data sets from anyone?
No, and honestly, one of the things that makes our company so valuable is that there aren't many data sets regarding crystal like formation. So there's a lot of data sets out there that are for, like crystalline structures. I know that Cambridge Crystallographic Data Center has their own like huge, millions and billions of different structures, but they don't have anything regarding, the conditions necessary to get to that crystal form. And
Mm,
so actually what I was telling you when I was building it took me, I think, 6 months in total to compile 10,000 different experiments from the literature. And it was, going into a paper, going to the supporting information, figuring out how they grew this crystal, and
okay.
then plugging it into Excel. And so that was over 940 papers, I think, is what it took.
Jeez.
And I had tried using, data mining, web scraping, and whatnot, because, you have some of that background in coding. But these models just aren't good enough yet to scrape word data. They're very good with figures, with numbers, but so far, it was very difficult to try and get one specific model to web scrape. So all of that had to be done manually, and that's just another thing that brings so much value to what we're doing.
how many like data sets are you trying to get like with this new funding and like you have 10,000 or I'm guessing maybe a little bit higher right now. How many are you trying to get to?
So in the proposal that we write, we say we want at least 2,000. And I think that's realistic and it would just be on pharmaceutically relevant compounds. So I think the more money that we get, the more data that we'll have. I think in the end, we want to have, 20,000. I think that to us would be phenomenal if that was, curated in-house. All of those data points specifically triggered by, different uncertainties within our model. I think that to us would be phenomenal. But for now, I think realistically we'll get 2 or 3,000 out of this new funding and we'll see where we can raise for more.
And how would you say like that data like does it incrementally improve the model? Does it like make it like a lot better? Like how does this go and how is this like helping your business further and further along?
Oh man, so honestly, there are specific experiments where we're like, yes, this is gonna help so much, and then we add them into the model, and our like all of our like scores go down. It's like, no, take it out immediately, like please. So you don't really know until you go back and cross-validate. But I think off of 2,000 experiments or so, you can't say like, oh, the model isn't more robust. Like it absolutely would be. And for us, if maybe the scores go down a little bit, but they're significantly higher for pharmaceutically relevant compounds, I think that's still a win for us. So yeah, we'll have to see at the very end how it goes. It's something that we write in the proposal too. It's like we can't promise increased scores. We can't promise, that the platform will be ready. But for us, it's the next path that we absolutely have to take. And so yeah, that's where we are.
Okay. And going back to like the judging and pitching and stuff, like these judges, they definitely like ask you guys questions and they kind of like poke holes, maybe they ask like, is this going to like improve the model and stuff? Could you tell us like what's the hardest question an investor or judge may have asked you and how you kind of rebutted that?
It wasn't even a question. We went to Minneapolis and we competed in E-Fest, and at that point we placed fourth, which is a national competition, which is great. We won 15,000. But I think we could have placed higher if I had answered this a little bit better. And it wasn't even a question. We got pretty much grilled. We were live on stage and we got grilled and we had, someone with a background in business say, we had a subscription model at $5,000 per month. And he told me we should have been charging on a per experiment basis and we got grilled for it and we got absolutely grilled for it and there was nothing we could really do except say you're absolutely correct. We think that you're right in saying this and maybe this would be more relevant for what we're doing. So I think the main lesson, it wasn't even a question, but the main lesson that you could take away from something like that is check check what you're doing on all fronts, scientific, business, your business plan, everything should be checked very heavily before you go and pitch because you will have people with much better backgrounds and much better insights into what you're doing when you get on that stage. And so you want to make sure that you're as prepared as possible. And I think if we had not gone through our pitch with so many scientists, if we had actually gone through our pitch with a lot more like CEOs, business people, then we could have avoided something like that and maybe walked away with a little bit more funding. So yeah, that's the main lesson that I would tell anyone.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of tough. Yeah, the whole point of these competitions is that you do learn as well as getting the funding. So it's yeah, I see what happened there. It's tough always. If a high schooler was like wanting to get into this and like wanting to get like this feedback from like scientists, CEOs, what's their like first step when they have an idea? Even before like making anything, is there a first step you would recommend for just kind of getting people to, like poke holes in it first?
Mhm. Great question. So I think entrepreneurs are some of the like nicest and meanest people at the same time. So it's really interesting. I think I all of the entrepreneurs that I had reached out to were very, very open to critiquing my business pitch. And I think it's because a lot of people just want to see young entrepreneurs succeed, especially, with all the understanding that they had probably gone through that same phase of just not knowing that uncertainty. So just go on LinkedIn and look up people who have their own businesses, maybe CEOs, CSOs, and whatnot, and just reaching out and saying, hey, can I take 5 minutes of your day? run you through my business idea and let me know what you think. I think that would work. And honestly, after high school, I know there aren't that many resources at the high school level, and I understand because I've been there. But when you get to college, the resources are genuinely infinite. Regardless of where you go, you will always have a community of alumni. You will always have a community of entrepreneurs who have gone through your school, who will absolutely be open to helping you if you just utilize that. So if you ever feel like you're running out of resources, you just give it time because absolutely everything will open up.
Yeah. Is there anything you wish like someone had told you before starting this company?
Anything I wish. I think that it was going to take significantly longer than I thought. Because I remember after we had won that liftoff competition, that was two competitions in like 2 months that we'd won. I was like, oh, if I keep this up, I'll be at $1 million in like, 5 years. No, it's unrealistic. So I think one of the things is just having patience. Things are going to be slow. There are going to be times where you just plateau. There's no progress made. And that's completely fine. Everyone goes through those phases, and it's just getting out of those and figuring out how you're going to get out. So yeah, I think I would give that piece of advice to my younger self as well as to any other entrepreneur in the same spot.
Yeah. All right. If a high schooler did want to start, they get their idea validated, and they're like, okay, now I need to get into a lab. Like, let's say this is science-based. Like if a high schooler loves chemistry, biology, something like that. What's their first move to like get into a lab and actually start working on it?
Huh, that is another great question. So I think nowadays, it's ever increasingly difficult to have your own idea in a lab just because of the lack of grant funding within academia right now. So it definitely could be difficult, but I think if the idea is well worth pursuing, definitely there are people who would be interested, but you have to absolutely make sure that your mentor knows that this is something that you're looking to publish or this is something that they can have something that they benefit positively from because if not, I think the success rate will be will be 0 to none at this current stage. So just making sure you're clear with your mentor that this is something that they can benefit from as well.
Mm. And what would you say, like, let's say you're the professor now. What would you say a high school student has to give, like, to these professors or like these mentors? Like, what would you say is their benefit?
Yeah, I'd say just if I was a professor, which long ways to go, but I'd say, a clear path in which both people succeed. So for me, I think if I was a professor, I would want, certain criteria to be met. Like, hey, is this publishable? Do I have the funding for this? Do you have the funding for this? If not, where do we compromise? I think that would be something. So I think the main thing would be, can you publish off of this? And if so, you'll probably get in those labs. And that's something that we had as well. It's like we wanted to have people send us experiments but obviously, we're wasting other people's reagents and solvents, and that's money lost. So there has to be something where people benefit from. And for us, it was like,
Mhm.
yes, when we publish, you will be on that paper. So
Okay. Nice. So you're running a company while a college student and you're planning a PhD after graduation. How are you thinking about like balancing that? And is running the company like something you see continuing into like a PhD and into being a professor? Or do you think it's just more like a stepping stone for you to kind of get in the higher levels of academia?
my co-founding team all pretty much all wants to do their PhDs. And so for
Mm.
us, we're building as much as we can right now. We're moving as fast as we can right now, just to have, this company acquired by the time that we get into these PhD programs. So if it's not something that happens, then I guess we'll work part-time on it. But for us, if we can get to the point where this platform just runs autonomously, we have clients we have people who enjoy what we're doing. I think it's something that we can consider pursuing for quite a long time. But for us, our main goal would be just to get acquired and to move on to the next stage of our lives.
Okay. All right. So as we're going towards the closing here, I'm gonna do a couple like rapid fire questions. So the first one, what's your best productivity habit to like be working so hard on these?
When I'm working, I throw my phone all to the other side of the room. I don't listen to it, I don't see it. So it just keeps me dialed in.
Okay. What's one book or resource, YouTube video, course, anything for anyone trying to combine science and business?
Ooh, I don't know the name, but I think before you can combine science, AI with your business, you need to learn how to code. So just going on YouTube and taking an intro Python course could take 6, 8 hours, something like that. I think going through that is absolutely crucial.
All right. And can you give us finally one word to describe what building Crystal XG has been like?
Stressful.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. We really enjoyed having you on. You gave some great info to our listeners.
No, absolutely. Thank you for having me.